You're watching the New Stack Makers, a podcast for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more information and articles about at-scale technologies, please visit thenewstack.io. Now enjoy the show.
Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of the New Stack Makers. I'm your host, Heather Joslin, Editor-in-Chief of the New Stack. And today we're revisiting a topic that's been at the center of the software development world for at least the past few years, platform engineering. Platform engineering has emerged as a reaction to the challenges inherent in DevOps. It's meant to make it easier for developers to build and deliver applications in a standardized way without the cognitive load involved in choosing from an endless array of options and tools. And it's also meant to free operations engineers from the repetitive tasks involved in provisioning infrastructure for those developers. So everybody wins, right? Well, it's been a fast-growing movement, according to Gartner. By 2026, 80% of software engineering organizations will have started a platform team or initiative. But now we're a little further down this golden path. See what I did there? There are clearly things that organizations are grappling with as they try to adopt platform engineering. And so I think it's a good time for us to consider the question of what's next for this movement. To help us unpack all of this and get a sense of where platform engineering is headed, we're joined by a pair of experts. First, Mallory Haigh, Director of Customer Success at Humanitec. Hi, Mallory.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about Humanitec and your role there?
Sure. So Humanitec is one of the leaders in the platform engineering space, not just in terms of products, but in terms of thought leadership. We have the Humanitec Platform Orchestrator, and we're also the originators of the open source project SCORE. My role there is a little multifaceted. So not only am I the head of customer success, but I also am now going by the title of principal platform advocate. So I do a lot of teaching, educational work around platform engineering as a practice, the best practices surrounding it, spend a lot of my time delivering what I like to call platform therapy to organizations and just getting in there and helping them adopt this way of thinking, this way of working, as well as adopt the products that we offer at Humanitec.
Sounds good, and congratulations on the new title as well.
Thank you.
And we're also joined by Nathen Harvey, DORA lead and developer advocate at Google. Hi, Nathen.
Hey, Heather. Good to see you again. Thanks for having me on today.
Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. Can you now? A lot of TNS readers are familiar with DORA and what it does, but if there's anybody listening to this, watching this, who does not know, can you tell us what DORA does?
Yeah, for sure. DORA is a research program that's been going the research program's been running for over a decade now. And this is research into how do teams get better at delivering and operating software. And of course, we're talking about technology-driven teams. And many of those technology-driven teams today are starting to deploy and deliver those applications on top of a platform. So my role as the lead of DORA is to work together with the researchers to put together the research program every year, but then also to take the research findings out into the community and out to our customers and really help people take those findings and put them into action. I like to say that you can use our findings from the research program as the hypothesis for the next improvement that you're going to make on your team. DORA, at the end of the day, is really all about how do you get better at getting better. It's a journey of continuous improvement.
Sounds good. And we always report on the DORA report's findings every year. I'll be sure to link to our latest article about that in the show notes that accompany this piece. So let's dive in a little bit to the most recent DORA report, which was released in October. The study found that having a dedicated platform engineering team increases productivity at the software development team level by 6%. But it also found a few things that are concerning. Among organizations that had adopted an internal development platform, throughput decreased by 8% and change stability decreased by 14%. So my question, and we'll start with Nathen, like what could be some of the things that could be happening within organizations that prevent platform engineering from improving metrics like that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. And just to help, again, sort of level set with Dora, we sort of have a center of gravity around software delivery performance. And we measure that using two high level concepts: throughput, how much change can you push through the system, and stability. When you push changes through the system, how stable are those changes? I like to think of those as like, an unstable change is one where you make a deployment to production and you or someone around you shouts out an expletive because something's gone terribly wrong. We need to roll that change back or push forward a hotfix, something along those lines. And so we really hope that platform engineering helps enable those teams to have higher throughput and higher stability. In fact, in our research, we typically see that those two things move together. They aren't trade-offs of one another. So in order to be more stable, you have to have higher throughput. They're very complementary to one another, if you will. And so this was the first year that we really did dig into platform engineering as a thing in our research study. And we had to start with a pretty broad definition of a platform because, as Mallory, I'm sure, can tell you, there are many organizations that have platform engineering teams that don't necessarily do anything to build a platform or enable an internal developer platform or anything like that. So, like I said, our definition was very broad. It was essentially a set of capabilities that's shared across multiple applications or services, where the goal is to improve efficiency and productivity. And importantly, in our survey, we reminded our participants that a dedicated platform engineering team is not required. While in some organizations, you have people naming themselves the platform engineering team and not necessarily doing any of that work. In other organizations, you have no one named the platform engineering team, but a platform is emerging or being built. And what we found was that about close to 90% of respondents in our survey had some sort of internal developer platform. But as you mentioned, throughput and stability both seem to suffer a bit when you have that internal developer platform in place. And this is a really important question. Why is that the case? And unfortunately, our data can't really tell us exactly why. We can't pinpoint it with the data, but we have a number of hypotheses. One hypothesis I think that is really important to consider is the reason why you're putting a platform in place. If we're measuring only throughput and stability, and to be very clear, it's not the only things that we measure with Dora, but if those were the things that you are measuring, those might not be the reasons behind why you're putting a platform in place. I think in many enterprises, you put a platform in place so that you can improve consistency of the developer experience across a large sort of portfolio of applications. Each one of those applications today might be getting changes into production in their own way. And perhaps the platform is coming in not only to help them get changes into production in the same way, but also to help them follow the same compliance policies and security regulations that might be affecting all of those applications. It's really about shifting some of that overhead and that cognitive overload away from the applications and building it into the platform. When you're doing that, of course, initially, you would expect there to be some detriments to performance overall. And then over time, you would hope that those would improve. But again, maybe throughput and stability aren't the primary goals, but rather consistency and compliance with policies are the initial goals that teams are building towards.
And I'd like to dig in a little bit too to the things that a platform team should be measuring. But let's roll back a little bit to what Mallory. Start with what do you think are some of the common misconceptions that organizations have about platform engineering in your experience, as when they start to undertake a project like this?
Yeah, and I think actually Nathen brings up a really valid point in the metrics that they've seen, and this is something I see when I walk into a lot of orgs, and it's that not all platforms are created equal. Not all platform engineering teams are created equal. We tend to see a little bit of that, mentality that DevOps suffered from, which is that, is this a thing I buy? Is this a team I hire? And then suddenly I have this amazing performant engineering organization. That's really not the case. I would say that 10% of platform engineering is technical, 90% is cultural change. And that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of asking hard questions. It takes a lot of really introspective thinking about how things are done and why they are done that way. And it is a process to go through. the misconception being that, once we hire this team, all of a sudden they're going to build this platform, it'll be hyper performant, everything will be amazing. Simply not true. One of the primary philosophies that platform engineering runs on is that this platform is a product. Platforms as products need to start small, and they need to scale, and they need to start solving problems, not just making assumptions. So I think that ties in really well to what you're probably seeing in the Dora metrics. It's, a combination of not everything is created equal, not how everyone applies this philosophy is not created equal. The best practices are being taught now, but it took a while for them to be established. And we're at this point where I think you'll see it stabilize and mature. But, there's cultural change. There's always going to be an element of, did we break something?
Yeah.
When you start doing that stuff.
Yeah. And it seems like also sometimes there's when something emerges as a new movement, sometimes, like, for example, Kubernetes or the cloud or whatever, like there might be a rush toward we need this thing, but the cultural adoption or the adoption of it by your rank and file can lag sometimes. It seems, let's talk a little bit about measurement. There does seem to be some confusion about what to measure. I want to talk to you, Mallory, about, I know Humanitec did a study with Gitpod that was released in November, found that 45% of platform teams surveyed don't measure anything at all related to the platform. And a significant number measure according, simply use Dora metrics, which may or may not be what they need sufficient for their particular use case. What should organizations be measuring when they're starting a platform effort? And maybe you can each chime in on that, but start with Mallory.
Yep. Dora is great. It's a good starting point, but it's not the whole picture. And people have to use it appropriately. That's one thing that I've definitely noticed, is that the organizations that are measuring Dora aren't always using it to understand where the problems are in process and in systems, and instead thinking about it more, it's just about problems in people. But that's not usually the case. It also takes a little bit of time to see change through. So one of the things that I will spend a lot of time with teams working on is understanding their status quo, but not just from that hard Dora line perspective. We want to look at, it may sound a little soft, but things like satisfaction. We want to maybe measure a net promoter score type thing from developer experience, from their day-to-day. That's something we talk about a lot. How do you build a survey for that? How do you ask people these questions? And then some of the other things, I really like to measure is established priorities against the business priorities. So maybe that is something like cost savings. These are important to tie into platform engineering initiatives, but also understanding just the overall experience side of things. So maybe you identify some sort of metric internally, like the amount of time that it takes for someone to achieve a simple task. Maybe that is the goalpost for what you want to improve and how you want to measure success. And that is totally okay. You can start small and then go big with your metrics. There's no one saying that you have to start with these big overarching performance indicators right at the start. Sometimes starting small and showing change gradually and increasing that impact over time is the most important thing you can do. But yeah, that's how I tend to see it when I start with this stuff.
What about you, Nathen?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Mallory has said there, especially the bits about starting small. I think that is, one of the sort of pitfalls that I've seen with platform engineering is that a platform engineering team gets spun up. They understand what the platform needs to be, and they go disappear for, 12, 18, 24 months to build a platform, and they come back and ta-da, here's the platform, and nobody cares. And that is because they aren't necessarily treating that platform like a product, as Mallory said. And I totally also agree that we need measures that are going to look at things that we're going to get good signals from in the short term, as well as the measures that we're going to get signals from in the long term. And those software delivery metrics from Dora is probably something that you're not going to realize improvements on day one, day two, month one, month two of your platform. It is much more important to start off with things like developer happiness, developer productivity, and maybe if you're building and I guess remembering why you're building the platform. For example, if you are building the platform to increase compliance with some policies, Maybe you start measuring how long does it take to complete an audit. And then you can show that when you're on the platform, the audit experience is easier and the time it takes to complete an audit is much easier. That gives other teams good ideas that, hey, we should think about migrating to the platform. Of course, other metrics that you might want to look at include things like how much coverage in terms of your application portfolio, how many of those applications are actually on the platform, what's the time it takes to onboard a new application onto the platform. All of those things really matter as well.
And I would also imagine, like, start with asking your developers what their pain points are, right? I mean, that's the whole purpose of
why you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And the thing that goes along with that is understanding what your developers love. Because don't take that away from them. You want to let them keep solving the problems that they love to solve and take away the things that are preventing them from solving those problems that deliver real business value that they're really engaged with and so forth.
Something that we've been looking into a lot at the New Stack is agentic AI, generative AI, AI agents. What kind of impact do you think that will have on platform engineering in the coming years? I mean, not just in the technology, but in terms of the investment within organizations. Will it move away from things like platform engineering? Or
I think it will have a place. And I think what you will see is the intersection of this technology with the philosophy of platform engineering. And even if a lot of that comes down to enabling a platform to help support people developing an AI product, for instance. So something like, you need GPU orchestration. That's a big deal. That's really important. Getting things out quickly, making changes fast. That's incredibly, incredibly impactful stuff. And if you have a team that is able to just do their job and get that stuff done without worrying about throwing something over the fence, I think that enables a lot faster throughput. The other thing, and the other side of something we're actually working on right now, is exploring the collaboration of platform engineering products like the Humanitec Platform Orchestrator with AI tools. And this is something we are actively, as of right now, working on. And it's very exciting because what it means is that it's another abstraction layer, but it's an abstraction layer that has a lot of power behind it. And it's an abstraction layer that can enable a lot of different things to happen with a fairly complex data set or fairly complex landscape under the hood. So I think you will see that, even that LLM style, I ask my platform about something and it gives me an answer or it performs a task for me based on what tools it has available to it. That is the sort of thing we are looking at and starting to experiment with now.
And what is your view of all this, Nathen?
Yeah. My view is that this is a really interesting moment, as AI is really starting to take over a lot of the conversation. In our research, we're seeing that many organizations are setting AI as a top-level business priority, more adoption of AI. I think this both parallels the platform engineering journey and represents a tremendous opportunity for those platform engineers. First, it parallels it in that, why do I use generative AI as a developer? It's to take away the toilsome work from me and let the computers do the work that they're really good at. That's not dissimilar to what we're trying to build out with our platforms. And then also for those burgeoning or even established platform engineering teams, this is a good test. We've got new technology coming in, whether it's developers using AI in their workflow or developers building new AI experiences for their customers. How does the platform support that? This is a true test of those platform engineering organizations and those platform engineering efforts. Can you enable that for your developers? And then finally, I think the other thing that's super fascinating about all of this, Mallory talked about how this is as much a cultural change, maybe even more so than a technical change. I'm a firm believer that your technologies and the tools that you have reinforce and amplify the culture that you have. And the best way to change the culture in an organization is to change how people work. That's what you change first, not necessarily how they think, but first how they work. That drives cultural change. So we're at this beautiful moment where we've got all of these new tools coming in across the whole realm of AI, but also marrying that together with platform. We're really changing how people are getting work done. And that can have real tremendous impacts on the culture that we have within our organization. be careful about that because you want to make sure that you're driving towards a healthy culture that's going to lead to really great outcomes for everybody.
It does circle back somewhat to what Mallory said about this being 90% the people, the culture,
Absolutely.
the people. What do you each see as the next? What's ahead for the platform engineering movement in terms of like next steps? What are the next challenges and debates that you see coming ahead?
I mean, AI for sure.
Yeah.
It's inescapable at this point. But what
Yeah.
I am finally starting to see is kind of the overall shift culturally in the engineering space, more towards caring about people, more towards thinking about that experience that someone has on a day-to-day basis. I think about what it was like for me as an engineer when I did that full time, and why I stopped doing it. And now I'm thinking about this change that is starting to happen and hoping that doesn't happen to similar people or people in similar situations, because people are talking about it, talking about psychological safety, talking about cognitive load. Developers are human beings, and that like platform engineering is enabling the shift in conversation to open the doors and give these human beings a voice, and not just like not just a voice to challenge the status quo, but a creative one. And I think that is really, really exciting for me to see. And I see it every day in the teams we work with. These people are just enabled to start challenging ideas and putting their own forth because they can move quicker, which is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I love that ability to like lean into the creative aspects of being an engineer. Engineering is creative work at the end of the day, and offloading things to AI and or to a platform should open up more time for that creativity and the opportunity to explore new avenues. I think one of the biggest challenges or next steps that's really important is just remembering that yes, engineers are people, and also we do all of this in the bounds or the boundaries of an organization. And that organization has goals that it's trying to meet. Maybe it's revenue and profitability or customer satisfaction, recognizing that the role that technology plays in delivering that business value and that those customer outcomes, I think is so super important. And remember, and then tying our efforts right to the business goals that matter, right? We get funding from the executives in our organizations. They're moving towards specific business level KPIs. We have to be able to demonstrate that the work that we're doing connects up to those and enables the achievement of those KPIs.
Okay. That's well said. And one last question. Could each of you offer our listeners one vital piece of advice if they are planning to start a platform engineering team or initiative in their organizations?
I guess my piece of advice would, maybe it's two, maybe not one, but maybe they're the same. It would be to start with why. Why are you building in this platform, and who are you building it for? And don't go off into a corner and build it. You have to go talk to the people for whom you're building that platform, starting small and then expanding the scope of the platform over time as you get some early successes is super important. Yeah.
I'm going to 100% agree with that. My biggest advice is to be the annoying 7-year-old child and ask why, not just once, but multiple times. And in many different contexts, not just why you're building a platform, but when you go to ask a team about what their pain points are, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? Dig down into the root cause, because chances are there's something underneath that you can actually seriously help with, but you have to ask why. And continue to do that through the whole process of building and maintaining a platform. It's never going to be done. That's not a thing in software engineering. There's no such thing as done, and there's nothing, that says platform engineering works any differently. So ask why, continue to ask why, and have that as your North Star. Your why is why you need to keep doing it. And yeah, my other piece of advice is just be open to being challenged and be open to hearing a different perspective and exploring what that actually might mean.
So good advice. Staying curious, asking why, knowing why you're doing things, not doing them because you can. If you're not doing them for the sake of it.
If I may, you can't do it alone either, right? And so a lot of what we're talking about, when you treat a platform as a product, it means you're having conversations with the people that are going to use your platform. But I think that those conversations, and this is a great example of it right here, right now, those conversations can expand beyond the four walls of your organization. There's a thriving community around platform engineering where we're all learning and sharing together. I think it's really important to try to get and stay connected with that community as well.
Excellent. Are there specific places you would direct people to, at particular resources, websites?
Platformengineering.org, the biggest platform engineering community that there is, hosts of PlatformCon. I'm very grateful to be involved with them as well, teaching the platform engineering certification course, which is growing and expanding all the time. It's a huge community, big Slack group as well, and there's a lot of interesting stuff happening over there. But Nathen, you might have some other resources too that you love. So
I was gonna point to those, but I'll also just sort of call out the Dora community as well. If you're interested in digging in more into the research and putting that into practice, you can join that at dora.community.
Okay, great, and we'll link to these sources in the show notes that go with this piece. Sounds like that's a good place to stop. We want to thank our guests, Mallory Haigh of Humanitec and Nathen Harvey of Google. Thank you very much, folks. It was a pleasure talking to both of you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.
And we'd like to thank all of you for joining our conversation. This has been Heather Joslin for the New Stack Makers, and we'll see you next time.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.